All right. So this is the sixth time we've done this course, I think. So welcome, everybody. Um, Let me start with a little bit of an introduction. The course is the result of a project 7 or 8 years ago designed to primarily make glider pilots better at using the radio. We thought there was a bit of a gap, and we wanted to teach what glider pilots need to do, not power pilots. So this course is very much designed around the need of glider pilots. But it's a comprehensive course. Unlike power pilots who use the radio rather more while they're training, radio isn't an extensive part of our flying training as glider pilots. So we have to do it a bit more thoroughly than maybe the average power pilot needs to do. We also wanted to reduce the barriers for glider pilots getting a FRTOL, that's how we pronounce that word, Flight Radio Telephony Operator's License. It's the license you need in order to talk to air traffic service units when you're in flight. And we managed to get a more appropriate test for glider pilots, one that is based on a glider flight, and we've been trying to lower the cost. So this course is a relatively low-cost way of going about getting this thing. So those are the main two objectives. And actually, the first one was the more important of the two, in my mind, at any rate. And it's important to emphasize that the course does get you a full FRTOL, one that you could go and use on the flight deck of an Airbus A320, should you so wish. Myself and Chula Rupasina are going to be delivering this course. Unfortunately, I've chosen the dates based around my holidays, and Chula's not able to join us till later on the course, but he'll be doing a couple of the sessions. I'm currently CFI at Cambridge. I'm a full CAT regional examiner and a flight examiner when we changed to Part SFCL. I have a PPL, I fly tugs. And I used to have an instrument rating. Unfortunately, I had to give that up for medical reasons, but I can still remember how to do that stuff. Chula's from London Gliding Club. He has been an RT examiner. He's a full CAT and a tug pilot at London Gliding Club. And he does have what's called an ROCC, which means that he can act as an air-ground communications service person. And he does instant, I think, something like that. There is space for extra help. At some point, we're going to need to pass this course on to other people. So people with some degree of IT literacy and some degree of RT literacy who fancy taking on this particular challenge, please do have a conversation. So objectives for this session, and very much each of these 6 formal sessions we'll be doing are in 2 parts. There's a little bit of one of us talking, and there's quite a lot of you practicing in small groups. And it's the second bit that's probably the most important of that. But for this first session, we're going to talk about how we will use Zoom, much less important now, perhaps, than it was when we started doing this at the beginning of COVID, when video conferencing was pretty new to everybody. Now most people are used to it. But I'll just pull out a couple of things. Then we have a section on the reinforcement of this week's key messages. So we're going to talk about some of the stuff in part 1, and hopefully you've looked at that material. And then we'll split into smallish groups and we'll practice in those breakout groups. You can give us feedback either during the session via chat. And actually, I've just realized that I've arranged this so I can't see my chat. So we'll have to wait. If you put it in the chat, I will see it at the end, and I will address questions at the end. If you really need to stop me and ask me a question, please do. Just unmute yourself and interrupt. Don't everybody do that, because there's 200 people on the call and it won't work, and we just have here 200 people. Or you can send me an email after the session and I will answer that email. I'll also put any questions that people ask on the frequently asked questions part of the website. So there's some feedback there as well. Okay, so feedback via chat, but we'll pick it up at the end of me talking, or interrupt, or via email. So today's agenda, using the Zoom, how we're going to go about doing that, talk a bit about the current situation of the course and the test, talk about the role of coaches, and I've mentioned feedback. So we're using Zoom. It seems to work quite well for this session. There's a few things that if you're on a PC screen, it's going to look a bit like this. You can mute yourself using this button down here. You can turn the video off if you really want to using this button here. You can look at the participants here. This is the thing that will get you chat. You can only send messages to me. You can't chat amongst yourselves. And we don't really use the reactions thing. You might wish to switch between gallery view and speaker view, depending on which session you're in. In a big session like this, probably speaker view is best. You don't need the whole gallery. In a small session like the breakout group, you might want to see the whole group of people who are in the breakout group with you. I'm going to croak a bit because I picked up a cold. So I apologize for that. Few tips, please leave your microphones muted whilst I'm talking, otherwise we'll get little interruptions as the dog barks or somebody comes into your room. Chat, I've mentioned that. We are recording the session, but of these formal sessions, it's only the bit where me or Chula are talking. We won't be recording the breakout, so you don't need to worry about embarrassing yourself in those things. But questions and answers we will record, and I will post a link to the recording on the website for people who missed the session to go to. When we go to breakout rooms, and there'll be about a 5-minute gap between me finishing talking and you asking questions and going to the breakout groups because I have to set them up. So I'll do that setup during that time. And then I'll launch the breakout rooms and you'll have an invitation to join. You have to press join and then you'll get into the breakout room. When you're there, you can ask me for help and I can drop and join you one group at a time, or you can leave the breakout room and that will come up to the main session. If for some reason your internet connection breaks briefly, then you'll have to dial back into the call, but you'll come in at the top level. When you do go to a breakout room, if you could make a note of the number of the breakout room, that's going to make a huge difference if you have to come back in, because I won't know where you were. So you'll have to tell me, I want to join breakout room 13 or something, and I can put you back in that room. But if you just say, send me back to the breakout room I was in, I won't have a clue. So do make a note of the number. Okay, so the online BGA FRTOL course, it was originally developed with an organization, with a bit of support from an organization called Airspace for All, which was a group set up to do good things in aviation, really. And I can't remember quite how it ended up, but we ended up with a bit of support to develop this course. And originally it was going to be just as some sets of slides that we could send off to clubs, and then clubs could run their own RT courses. And as we went along, we started putting in bits of audio and things like, and video and things like that. And then we realized actually we had the basis of a course. And then COVID hit us and we thought, well, actually we could do this course online. And we thought we'd try it. We thought maybe we'd get 40 or 50 people interested. And I think we had about 180. So, and similar numbers every year since. It is in a way standalone. You could get all the information that we're going to give you just by watching the videos, looking at the materials on the website, learning that, and you'd be good to go. But in our experience, it's very helpful to practice. And I see somebody, one of the RT examiners on the call has helped, given me some feedback and said that they want practical support in the requirement. So I think this will probably count, and we need to check that. So the 6 2-hour sessions for key messages, practice, and questions. And then we generally set up some coaching groups, small group coaching. And for those, we allocate specific coaches and students together, generally on a geographic basis. So if you belong to Cambridge Club, we'll try and find a coach from Cambridge for you or whatever. That doesn't work for everybody, but it works for a decent number of people. We have something like 200 people signed up for the course and about 55 volunteers. Not everybody can make every session, but that's okay because, as I say, we record it and they can look at it afterwards. It's important to realise that most of the work on this course has to be done by you outside of these sessions. And there's quite a lot to do. There's the pre-reading, which I've pointed you at already, which is the theoretical knowledge that you need to pass the exam. And frankly, most of that you need to do a good job out there in the when you're cross-country. And it's the basics and all that theoretical knowledge. And then we've got a video lecture for each part, which gives you examples of radiotelephony and more about the theoretical knowledge you need. We have scripts for breakouts and practice. So that's examples of what the RT might look like. And then we have a little app called Script Rehearser, which lets you practice on your own. And Script Rehearser is an app which will run on your phone and which actors use to learn lines, and that actually transfers quite well onto what we're doing. So I would recommend it as a way of practicing some of the stuff that we'll be doing. You'll have seen the website, given that you're here, but this section of the website on the BGA FRTOL course has these sections, and there's a lot of material in there. So the course material section is what week by week what you need to do. The Zoom recording section is this is where the Zoom recording of this session will go. There's a lot on background theory. There's the frequently asked questions part, and you've already done the sign up bit. We've got a good number of videos and written material that come from other places as well, which are worth browsing. So good place to go look. The Script Rehearser Act, this is what it looks like. You have a script that looks a bit like this. It will read these things out to you, and then it leaves you a gap, and you will say your bit, and then it will tell you what you should have said. So quite a good way of rehearsing on your own. There is Rob Sainsbury did work out a way of running it on a PC, but it's probably only for the relatively technically knowledgeable. You can do things like speed up or slow down the characters. So if people are gabbling at you, it just might mean that you just got the settings wrong. What we want you to do, though, on all the examples we're giving you is, although we're giving you the exact words for that example, we want you to learn the structure, not the detailed words. We don't want you just to recite this stuff as a parrot. Rather, what we want you to do is think about how the message is structured and fit your own examples into that. And tell me about any corrections, any things we've got wrong. The FRTOL test, that's changed over the past few years a little bit. The CAA rolled out a new test which can be based around a glider or a helicopter or a powered GA flight. And it's a little less formal in some ways than the old style test. When you do it, you'll fly a route that the examiner will have made up in an area that you will have agreed with that examiner beforehand. There is a short written test. It's only a dozen questions or so. Probably you're going to do it at the same time as the practical test, although we hope it will be at some point be subsumed into the SPL written papers. Andrew Watson, who was heavily involved in this course in prior years, is running all the SPL theoretical knowledge exams at the moment. And he's pretty confident that we'll be able to do that, but I don't know when that will happen. The coaches, and we need to give them a lot of thanks for the effort they put into this, are here to help you learn. Most of each of the sessions that will run, these six formal sessions, are going to be coaching. They'll use the scripts that we've developed. As I say, when the course is finished, we'll link coaches to students to prepare for the test for those that want to do a test. It's not compulsory to do a test, but the learning is your responsibility. It's not the coach's job to make you do it. So you've got to put the effort in. You've got to take the initiative. Coaches, those of you who've been here before will be very bored with me saying this now. Please, if you want to coach a group today, I know there are one or two people who can't coach a group, in which case don't do this. Can you make sure there is a star like that in front of your name on the screen? I can see lots of people have done that. Here's how to do it, depending on what device that you're on. But if you don't do that, you will not end up coaching a group on your own. You'll end up in a group with some other coach, which might be fine, but that's where we are. Right, so that's the framework for how we're going to move ahead. Now let's talk about part one and some of the key messages in part one. So, okay. So, general advice. What we're doing here is teaching and learning a language. And that language has some vocabulary and it has some grammar. The reason that's the case is that when we're talking on the radio, which is sometimes a very noisy channel, by using standard words and phrases, it becomes much easier to understand. I'll give you an example. If there's only two things I'm going to say on a radio channel, and that might be take up slack and all out, it's quite easy to distinguish between them, particularly if I do them, say, at different speeds. Take up slack and all out, all out. So although the channel might be distorted, I can get the meaning. So when one of the reasons that we have this language and vocabulary of RT is to make sure that the message gets through. Now, having said that, there's often more than one way of saying things. For those who are going to do the test, that can be a bit more prescriptive. But certainly when you get out into the real world, there are perhaps a few more options. So I wouldn't get too concerned when you're flying if you can't do it exactly right. It's actually good enough to do it roughly right. For the test, you need to be a bit better than that, and we'll get you there. The very important thing is that you're understood, and a secondary objective is that we keep things short. So one of the things we try and do when using the radio is not to say lots of unnecessary stuff. Partly because everybody's listening and it takes up some of their bandwidth to listen to it, and partly because sometimes there's just a lot of people trying to talk on the channel, and keeping it short allows more of them to do that. Right. There is some stuff in here that you just need to know. In particular, the material in the introductory reading has quite a lot of that. So you might need to read that quite a few times and actually learn it. But for the rest, as Richard Feynman said, to understand, don't memorize, learn the principles, not the formulas. So that's why I say when we give you the scripts, we don't want you to learn those parrot fashion. We want you to use those as examples of structures that you're going to fit your own situation into. So let's give you an example of something you just need to know, and that's the ICAO phonetic alphabet. Probably most of you will have been exposed to this, but do you know it? Because if you're going to talk on the radio, sometime you're going to need to know this. So you need to find a way of learning it. Let's have a little example here. I want you to spell these out to yourself phonetically. So have a look at the first one. THE, what's that phonetically? It's Tango, Hotel, Echo. Okay, have a go at this one. And that's Quebec, Uniform, India, Charlie, Kilo. Oscar, November, Yankee, X-ray. Golf, Oscar, Bravo, Lima, India, November. Juliet, Uniform, Mike, Papa, Sierra. Oscar, Victor, Echo, Romeo. Tango, Hotel, Echo. Lima, Alpha, Zulu, Yankee. Delta, Whiskey, Alpha, Romeo, Foxtrot. Okay, so if you knew all that, that's great. You can move on to the next thing. If you missed some of those, that is something that you really want to go back to. Now, there are some rules as to how we say things. And some of these, a lot of these rules are written in blood one way or another. And we tend to be more prescriptive about the more important things. So here's a set of things: aircraft call signs, airspeed, frequencies, headings, wind speeds, and directions. And this is about pronouncing numbers. And we pronounce each digit individually, with a little exception, which is that for frequencies, we'll pronounce all 6 digits, except if the frequency ends in 00. Then the last 2 zeros are omitted. So we'll say 121.5 rather than 121.500. But if it was 121.495, that's what we'd say. And then for a different set of things, altitude, flight levels, height, cloud height, pressure setting, runway visual range information, visibility, and transponder codes, it's each digit individually, except for whole thousands and hundreds. So it would be 6172 or 7000. And there's another little different rule, which is that climb to or descend to must be followed by the word altitude or height. So descend to altitude 3,000 feet, not descend to 3,000 feet. And the reason for that is to avoid confusing 3,000 feet with 23,000 feet. So there's usually there's quite a good reason that we do things in particular ways. So these become natural after a while, but they're going to take a little while. So let's have a look at these things. Given the rules I just said, how would we pronounce this? And it would be flight level 60. So the numbers need to be pronounced individually. But this one, because it's a multiple of 100, flight level 100. That one is Squawk 7000. Squawk is an instruction to set your transponder to a particular code. This would be 150 degrees. This is QNH 1000, and note that the QNH, this is what's called a Q code, and there used to be loads of them, but there are only a couple left. And you'll probably know what that means. But 1000. And in this case, it's QNH 1013 because it's not a multiple of 1,000 or 100. So again, just stuff you have to know. And then if you've done the reading, you might know the answer to this. When is the word hectopascals used following a pressure setting? And that is if the pressure setting is less than 1,000 hectopascals. Again, written in blood. I think the Americans use inches of mercury rather than hectopascals for their pressure setting. And somebody once confused a 9 something something hectopascals pressure setting with inches of mercury and crashed. So we get this rule. There are some standard words and phrases which people mix up, and it's important to know the difference. The definitions are all in the material, the reading material. So there's Roger, Wilco, and a firm. And roughly, Roger means I've received that message. Doesn't mean you've understood it, it means you've received it. Wilco means yes, I will do that. Will comply, literally. And a firm means yes. So receive the message, yes, I will do that, and just yes. And here are 2 words that are very useful for glider pilots. And we definitely like the idea of, in priority, we aviate, navigate, and then communicate. So flying the aircraft, flying the glider is the most important thing. And if somebody calls you on the radio and you are too busy to deal with it, then the word standby is really useful. And they will wait until you're ready to talk. If somebody asks you to do something and you are unable to do it, then say so, unable. So quite often as glider pilots, we're in situations where we might be, an air traffic controller might ask us to do something, and it's a little bit of a negotiation. Unless we're in controlled airspace, and that's going to be pretty rare for most of us, it's a negotiation. So and we'll do our best usually to help, but sometimes we're not able to do it. So unable is a good word sometimes. Okay. From the pre-reading, are you able to write down the format for an initial call and the full message? Have a think about that. This is what we're going to focus on this week. Well, grab a pen and paper and let's have a look at them. So, initial call. There's basically a structure by which we start talking to air traffic control units. And it's an initial call, they respond, we do a full call, and then we go from there. So let's have a look at the initial call. It's who we're calling, who we are, and what we want. Very simple. So the who we're calling bit is the station's name. Who we are is our call sign. And what we want is a request. Generally, it's the service that we want. So, and we'll come to the detail about air traffic services outside of controlled airspace in a little while. But much of the time, it's a basic service that we're going to be asking for as we're flying around the country in our glider. So this might be Cambridge approach, glider, Golf Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta, request basic service. That is an initial call. So there we go, there it is. And the air traffic service unit, assuming that they're not too busy, will respond, glider Golf Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta, Cambridge approach, pass your message. So they've used our call sign, they've told me, they've confirmed what their call sign is, and they've said, fine, I'm listening to you, tell me what you want. And we've got a bit of a handshake here, so we both check that we're talking to the right people. We then say the full message. And again, there's a structure to this, which you'll see in CAT 413, which is the RT Bible. We're going to say who we are again, where we're from and where we're going, where we are in 3 dimensions, some other detail, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're going to deal with this in a glider in a moment, and then anything else that we want. So if we've got any other requests that we want to add on there. Now, in general, what we're trying to do is give the air traffic controller enough situational awareness of what we're doing that it's useful. So they need to know where we are and where we're headed. And most times when they're dealing with aircraft that are passing them, the aircraft are going from point A to point B. So this part, the departure airfield and the destination airfield, tells them quite a lot. Mostly though for glider pilots, we're not. We're going in a triangle. Now, CAT 413 does have the ability to say you're local to the airfield, but again, generally we're not doing that if we're cross country, which is why that I've made this little note here that lots of glider pilots leave this bit out. But you're going to need this for the test, so get used to it. So call sign. Normally there would be a type, but for us the prefix glider is sufficient. They don't need to know anything about what type of glider you're in. Put in your departure and destination airfield. And then we're going to say position level on QNH. And then here's the useful bit for gliders. Put in where your next turning point is or the direction that you're tracking. So if I say, for example, I'm at Bedford at 3,000 altitude, 3,000 feet, QNH 1020. My next comment would be either next turning point, Edge Hill, or tracking west. And that gives the air traffic controller enough situational awareness that they can place us and figure out where we're going to be. So that's the standard structure. So here's an example. Cambridge approach, glider Golf Alpha Bravo Charlie D Delta request basic service. Pass your message. That's the bit we did before. Glider Golf Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta from Gransden Lodge to Gransden Lodge, 1 mile east of Bourne, altitude 3,000 feet, QNH 1021, next turning point, Bury St Edmunds. I think in the script we've given you, we've left out that word altitude, and for the exam it might be quite useful to keep it in. So just make a little note of that and use that. Actually, 3,000 feet, QNH 1021 is unambiguous, but nonetheless, all the examples of this in CAT 413 have that word in. Glider Charlie Delta, QNH correct, basic service, report leaving the frequency. And then you would respond, basic service, Wilco Glider Charlie Delta. You'll see in the pre-reading that the service you're given is something you must repeat. So that's that. And if they gave you a different QNH, you'd have to repeat that too. So there's some stuff that there's a handshake on to make sure that you've got it right. The service you've got, the QNH, things like that. Okay, a few common questions. What about how do we address the launch point at a small club? Generally important not to call it, as you'll see in the pre-reading, calling it radio. So Gransden Lodge radio, for example, implies that a service is being provided, an air ground communication service. So we don't do that. So we will use the word launch point or base, and the BGA published some guidance on that, and that's what it says. A question we often get asked is a FRTOL needed for a gliding airfield with a discrete frequency, for example, HUSBOS, which has, I think, still 127,580. And the answer is no. On my website, I've put actually recently some stuff about the law on this, and I think you'll see it in the pre-reading. A FRTOL is needed to talk to an air traffic service unit. Glider pilots have an exemption if they're not, that they don't need a license if they're not talking to an air traffic service unit. But if you're going to talk to any of the three types of air traffic service unit, then at least technically, legally, you do need a FRTOL. Never come across an air trafficker who says he'd rather not have a call, even if you don't have a FRTOL, providing you say things sensibly, but nonetheless, that's what the law is. Does a FRTOL meet the needs of a glider pilot rather than a power pilot? Yeah. I'd say actually that probably about the first half of this course is the stuff that you will use 99% of the time, unless you want to go flying through bits of Class D or things like that. Or you need to make a Mayday call. The second half of the course is probably more about the stuff that you need to get the license. So providing you remember the first half of the course, you'll be much better at when you get in your glider. Occasionally we get asked this one, should we include what we're squawking in the initial message? You can, but it's not important. This one is quite important. Actually, when you get out there, you'll see that most glider pilots use glider plus their comp number or glider plus their trigraph rather than their full G-reg as call signs. And it works fine. So for example, when I'm flying, my glider is glider 28. It's nice and short. And it's much shorter and easier to say than glider Golf Charlie Lima Oscar November. So that's what I use. But for the purposes of the exam and for all the rest of this course, we're going to do it this way, because that's what it says we have to do. Right, the breakout groups. So what we're going to do is put you in small groups with a coach. And the coach's job is facilitation. The scenario is you're flying your glider, say from your club on a cross country. You can pick a nearby airfield you may pass. You're going to have to discuss this, how you're going to do this with the coach. The coach might suggest that you all work in the same place. So you're going to decide on a height and a position that you might make a call to get a basic service. The student acts as the glider pilot, the coach is air traffic control. And I want you to do that handshake of initial call, pass your message, and the full call. You can take it in turns. If the coach is up for it, you can try it all together. You've got a breakout script that you can use as a template, but see if you can do without it. And I really want you to be good at this by next time we meet in a week's time. This is the basic framework for everything we do from here, this structure. So get this nailed. There is a map that you can use on the website under the course materials part 1. So coaches can use that if they want. If that goes well, you can maybe extend it to leaving the frequency. So glider Charlie Delta request leave the frequency, glider Charlie Delta frequency change approved, something like that. But if you can get this done, well, that will be a very useful start. It's quite a soft start. It gets more intense as the weeks go on. Just small amount of warning. Okay, so I think we are up to the point where we can have questions. So in a moment, I'll stop the sharing and we'll take the questions. You can send them by chat or email afterwards, as I said. For next week, I want you to review the course materials for at least part 2, maybe go beyond at that. Be very good at the initial and full calls, and make sure you've got the pre-reading in your head. There's quite a lot of important stuff there that will make a difference to the next few sessions. Okay. So, right. Okay, so I've got a few questions here which I will deal with. Carol Marshall asks, for the exam, how important is it to pronounce the numbers as in the pre-reading, as in 1, 2, 3, 4? Yeah, it's probably better if you do that. Chris, have you got a view on that? No, you're muted, Chris. You need to
No, not really. It's not a problem if it's quite clearly 1, 2 instead of 1, 2, four, 9, 8. No, it doesn't really matter.
Okay, thank you. Chris is one of our RT examiners on the call, so he's very useful to ask questions like this for. Gabrielle says, so no Quebec November Hotel, just Q&H. Yes, it's one of the things that we just say the letters for. So there are a few of them. I'm sure I can think of another couple if I think hard. But yeah, we don't spell out everything using ICAO. Katie says, how accurate do we need to be when it comes to our height? What do we round to? Personally, I round about to the nearest 100 feet. So because I'm come from I've done power flying and instrument flying, I tend to be quite religious about setting the exact QNH that people give me. I know not everybody is like that, and you have a 30-foot error for every unit you're out. But we are flying gliders, and they are going up and down a lot. Can you confirm we'll be able to, Chris Walsh, can you confirm we'll be able to share screen? Yes, I believe so, Chris. I have set that up. Adrian Taylor, to what extent do we need actually to read Cat 413? Do most people try and get a printed copy or just read it online? Adrian, there's nothing that you need that's in Cat 413 that we don't deal with somewhere else on the course. But it's not a bad document, at least to know your way around. I think on the website we point you at particular sections of it, so avoids you having to read the whole thing. I wouldn't ever print it out though. I definitely read it online. I tend to sometimes when I'm looking for something, I'll do a search on it and see what it says. It is not the most wonderful document in the world. It is not entirely self-consistent. But that's language for you, I think. Nidge Murray says, what's an SPL? Well, Nidge, an SPL is a sailplane pilot's license. It's what we are all going to need, or all of us who are qualified are going to need if we don't have it already, by September of 2025. And this is a change in the licensing approach that is being taken in this country. So we're moving from BGA qualifications to a formal license. Actually, there's not going to be much change in terms of what we do, but the paperwork behind it is a little bit different. Okay, Catherine asks, do climb descend instructions use the words to at all? Yes, they do on occasion. And there are examples of that within. Okay, whoever's sharing whiteboards, perhaps they'd stop. Thank you. Can I make your talks full screen? I don't know, I'm afraid. Ilya, can the request part of the initial call be omitted if the request is non-standard? A good question. I think you'd have to go look at the exact words. Normally, you're requesting something if you're making a call. So request is a useful thing to have. Otherwise, why are you calling? I can't think of an example where you wouldn't say request, but if somebody else has one in their minds, that would be useful. Okay.
Hi, Paul. I don't know. I've just thought of one.
Okay.
If you want me to jump in.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, this is
right.
this time.
Sometimes you'll be on a basic service with a FISO, for example, and you want to do a transit. And what you want is them to go and speak to them on the phone and organize something so that, the clearance to go through rather than just calling them up. And rather than say all that, it's much easier to say Scottish information request and let them come to you and say, when they've got a moment, pass your message. It sort of, to my mind, gives the view that this is not just a quick position update or something like that. There's going to be more.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. But it didn't answer the exam question because he said, when could you not use request? And you just use request.
Oh, I see. I thought the question was, when do you not say what exact service you're requesting, like request basic service?
Okay.
Sorry.
I've misinterpreted, but you give a good example. Thank you for that one. I've definitely heard that, and I've definitely used it. So glad a Charlie Delta request, and I'll come back as Bruce says, pass your message, and then you can start talking to them. So yeah. Okay. Louise Walker, brief explanation of what basic information is. Basic service, I think, is what we're talking about, Louise. If you read the pre-reading, and I'll point you at it before next week, you will discover that there are 4 different services that you can get outside of controlled airspace, and basic service is the lowest of those services. It doesn't mean much more than we're going to talk to each other. I'm going to tell you when we go, and you're going to tell me anything that's really important. And on occasion, you will hear people saying, we're calling an air traffic service unit and saying, "Oh, I don't actually want a service. I just thought I'd give you a call and tell you where I was." It's much shorter to say request basic service because that's what you mean. Sarah says, I've been alerted to discrepancies between CAP 413 and safety sense leaflets on what should we rely for the purposes of achieving the license. I hope there's nothing too serious in terms of discrepancies, but CAP 413 is the thing to go with. That's what the examiners will be using. If you go and do the exam, they're not trying to catch you out. Now you might get feedback as to do it this way rather than that way, but providing you're reasonably good at it, the occasional mistake I think is acceptable. Okay. Does FRTOL include some sort of English language assessment, or is it a different test? Chris, you might want to jump in on this if I get this wrong, but if you're a native English speaker, then an examiner can basically just sign you off as a native English speaker, and you'll get a level 6. If you're not a native English speaker, it becomes a bit more tricky, and we'll need to look at that a bit more carefully. Under some circumstances, you need to go for a separate test with somebody who's qualified. Is that right, Chris? You just know that?
Yes, absolutely correct. We can only issue level 6. And sometimes you see someone's name is maybe Polish, Russian, or Swiss or Spanish. I actually give them a phone call beforehand to save them a journey. And by a phone call, I can say privately to myself, he's a level 6. But if he's not, I would say, don't even turn up. You'll need to go to an English language school.
Yeah.
Wellisbourne Mountford is the obvious one, where you'll get maybe a 6, but probably a 5 or a 4. But I can only give 6s, and any other examiner can only give 6s. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Adrian suggests we don't need to say feet when giving air traffic control your altitude. However, Adrian, I point you at CAP 413, which has lots of examples of people saying feet when they give their altitude. Okay, Jersey says, I'm not a native English speaker. Examiner did give me a level 6. Fantastic. Right, so that is all the questions I can see in the chat. Does anybody have anything else they would like to
Hello,
ask?
Paul.
Yeah.
Can you make people aware of the change about leaving the frequency? Because I think we talked about that as coaches, but can you let everyone know that you're not using the en route?
Yeah, we haven't got en route anywhere in the material, I think, Robbie.
No, I was just reading it in some of the actual breakouts, that some of those have still got the en route.
Have they? Oh, can you point me at them, because I'll take them out. I thought we'd taken those out.
Okay.
So yeah, so what Robbie's saying, sometimes if you're flying a powered airplane around, when you leave a frequency, generally the air traffic will give you next frequency. You'll tell them exactly what frequency you're going to, and you'll repeat it back. As glider pilots, often we just go to a gliding chat frequency, or maybe just turn the radio off. We don't necessarily stick with the air traffic service units all the time. And there are some shorthands for that, but they're not formal Cat 413. We're going to teach you the formal Cat 413 three-way largely. Okay. So Anthony, yeah, can you elaborate on that? Is that enough, Anthony? Or
yeah, that's perfect. Thanks.
okay, fine. All right, good. Anything else?
Yeah, the YouTube video lectures also have en route in them.
Okay. Don't use them for the exam. But very useful when you're out there in the real world. It's a little bit of an idiosyncrasy of the chief examiner. He doesn't like en route, which was a well-used expression in the past, but he's come up with a different expression which isn't in Cat 413 either, which is leaving the frequency. There you go.